Yes. Angus Kennedy, our famous nature guide, is with us today. And did you look at the moon, Angus?
Hi, Shaun. Yeah, I enjoyed it yesterday, all right? I didn't stay up till 3 in the morning there to see it, I got to say. Unfortunately, but it's an amazing big moon. And I enjoyed going down to look at the tide, too.
I was going to ask, because if there's a full moon, there's a big tide, isn't there?
Full moon, you get big tides. And they call them spring tides, which is a bit confusing, but they happen every 2 weeks, every full moon and every new moon. And this time of year, and in springtime, when it's the equinox, when the moon is kind of directly over the equator, or the sun, is directly over the equator, you get the biggest of those spring tides. So right now, the harvest moon, you get huge spring tides. So this evening, if you're anywhere near the sea, anywhere near the coast, get down around about 7:30, I think it is, the high tide, and be well worth a look.
I'd love to see that.
Yeah, it's fantastic, yeah.
I can't go this evening, but I'd love to. 7:30, and what time is it? Is that the peak?
7:30's about the peak, yeah. At 7:15.
So they come in very high.
Very, very high tides and very, very low tides then, round about now or another hour or two, because it takes 6 hours for the tide to come in. It's also a great time to watch out for birds for the last couple of hours before the tides, before the high tide, because the high tide is pushing the birds out of their feeding areas, and they have to try and wait somewhere safely, so oftentimes they can come in quite close to you.
Right. Now, the spider talk at the moment. Spider talk. Somebody said to me yesterday, who hates spiders, asked, have you got any spiders? Well, I have kind of a couple of biggie ones that kind of wander about, but I leave them alone. But this person hates them, and they said there's kind of a bit of an influx of them at the moment.
And there always is at this time of year. They've been growing all summer. It's the males usually that are coming in looking for females. They're looking for somewhere a bit sheltered, and they're looking for females to breed with. And they can get very big. But pretty much all the spiders, virtually all spiders in Ireland are harmless. There's a lot of talk these days about false widow spiders, which have come in from other places in recent years, and they seem to be turning up in all sorts of places in Ireland. But the bite in general is no worse than a kind of wasp sting. Now, of course, that's not pleasant. But also they won't bite you if you leave them alone.
The big spiders in the house, will they bite?
Those won't bite, no. So wolf spiders are often some of the biggest spiders that you get in the house, and they're very big, and they can move very quickly. Yeah, and once they get down into the sink or into the bath, they don't mean to go there. They haven't come up to the sinkhole because they can't swim underwater. Well, most spiders can't. So once they're there, they're kind of trapped. They've fallen in there. It doesn't suit them at all. But spiders normally be hanging out in the corners. I quite like them, I got to say. We had a couple of wasps came into the house recently. One of them stung one of my daughters, and she wasn't too impressed with that. But we were looking at them, at a couple of wasps caught in a spider's web later on that day. So the spiders helped us out there,
I've sorted them out. I wasn't going to mention rats again, but now you're here, I will. I don't mean that in a personal way. We were talking about, there's a lady in a house, she says, in my council house, and she's got rats in the attic, and somebody suggested, Paul was on from Derry, and he said they got a ferret, and it sorted the problem out.
It's interesting. Rats aren't native to here at all. They were brought in. Nobody quite knows when, possibly back at the Norman times, possibly even earlier than that again. Along with mice, they would have come in off ships and that kind of thing. And they do incredibly well because we're messy. We're messy people. And they find plenty of food in their sewers. They find plenty of food if people are dumping rubbish, leaving rubbish about the place, which people do quite a lot, really. And they're tough little creatures. They can survive all sorts of conditions. Ferrets not a native creature either. They're related to our native stoat. Stoats will take out rats. So if we had more stoats and more wildlife habitats for the stoats, we wouldn't have quite as big a rat problem. And ferrets, it'll certainly get some of them. And perhaps if it's one house, it might clear up a problem there. But if it's in the likes of an estate, I think you'd have to call professionals, really.
Yeah, but if you had them in a house, Angus, this Paul was saying they'll go looking for them. I'm providing somebody that owns a ferret. I thought the ferret would go missing then, but he says no, they'll come back to the person that owns it. But it'll go looking for them, and it'll follow the scent, and even the scent of the ferret will bother the rats.
Yeah, it will. It'll put them off, and that could push them out, right? Yeah. The biggest thing is to find out where they're coming in as well. And that's, again, if it's a single house, that's a little bit easier. That's difficult if it's in an estate, because they might be coming up through sewer pipes that might be connected through a load of houses,
When do the mice tend to come in?
Mice at this time of year. This time of year, they've been very happy all summertime. There's been plenty of food out for them. There still is plenty of food now, but temperatures are starting to get a bit colder. The magic temperature for a lot of nature is around about 7 degrees. when the temperature kind of averages out at 7 degrees, so it's not quite there yet, grass stops growing, bugs can't fly, and mice and things like that like to start coming into the house.
How do you solve the mice problem?
Mice problem, blocking up the entrance holes is the best thing. I always try and discourage putting out poison, because other things can end up eating the poison. Or oftentimes mice might eat the poison. They might head out. It can be. It's not an instant death, so they might head out. They might die somewhere else, and then say a barn owl or a buzzard might come along and eat them up, and then it's eating the poison. And it's bad for them.
Well, are you not a fan of traps?
Traps, you can buy humane traps. I don't know how many people want to buy humane traps, but you can. I have one myself. I often catch mice when I'm working with school groups. I'll set out 1 or 2 humane traps.
What are they? How do you work?
They're long boxes, and I suppose they're maybe 2-inch square, but maybe a foot long. And the trap, the mouse goes into the trap. You bait it with a few peanuts or a bit of porridge or something, and it goes in there, and a little door falls behind it. And you leave a little bit of grass in it to keep it nice and cosy if it's going to be there for a while, and then you can show it to groups and let it go. Of course,
they're coming in now, so now's the time to get ready for them. Porridge, peanuts. Some people put chocolate out, don't they?
Yeah, chocolate seems to work very well. Anything sugary, they'll certainly like. I don't know how much they really like cheese. That old myth.
I think it's a myth, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. They prefer the kind of sugary things. And then when you think of what they're eating in the wild, and they're eating seeds and berries and that kind of thing. So replicate that.
Yeah. But nobody really wants them in the house, to be honest.
No, they don't. They don't. No. And it's all about finding the. Sure, you can trap them, but find the source, find where they're coming in, because if you can block that up. I know when I moved into a house a few years ago, and it took me ages to figure out when they were coming in. They were coming in where the drain pipe for the washing machine, and for the clothes washer, they were sneaking up that. And once I blocked that up, that was it.
Yeah. And how do you know you have them normally?
Well, the little droppings. And the droppings look very like bat droppings, but bat droppings will disintegrate in your hand, whereas these things will be a bit squidgy and they'll smell. Bat droppings won't smell.
Mice droppings, little black things.
Teeny little black things, yeah, only a few millimetres long. And you'll hear them too. You were mentioning earlier on the noise of the rats, but mice can be quite noisy too. And they will maybe chew through a bit of insulation or through a bit of wires and that kind of thing, so it's best to try and get rid of them, yeah.
Here he is. He's the man with the expertise on nature. He's Angus Kennedy, and he's taking your questions as well. And Heather, hello.
Hello.
Now, Heather, Housemartins.
Yes.
They are often confused with sparrows.
No.
Not sparrows.
Swallows.
Swallows.
Yeah.
See, I've done it again.
Yeah.
And people sometimes think they're swallows, but they're not. So, have you got them?
I have them building every year at the side of my house, yeah.
Yeah, and are they making a mess?
They do. They make an awful mess, but I don't mind. I like to see them coming and going.
Good on you, that's great.
Come a long way, don't they?
They do.
Yeah. Where do they come from?
They come from Africa.
Yeah.
I'm from Africa. And do you still have them, Heather? Because I know the ones around my house have left.
No, we still have them. We have a nest. They build at each side of the house now. One lot seems to have gone maybe about a week or 10 days ago. But we still have a nest at one side, and they seem to still be feeding young.
Ah, okay. It's incredible to think that those young will probably fledge very soon. Now, swallows and housemartins, and this sounds kind of cruel, but it's just the way they're hardwired. They have been known to abandon a nest, even if the chicks are fairly close to fledging, to leaving the nest. Because their hormones just completely change. Their kind of breeding instincts fade away, and they suddenly get the urge to leave. But it sounds like these ones are hanging on, and that's a good sign, because as far as I can see, mostly around Donegal, they're gone. I was down in County Clare all week, and they were gathering in big numbers down there. It's both swallows and housemartins, and when they gather up in those big numbers, it's very spectacular to see. But that's them getting ready for their journey down to Africa, down to South Africa.
So it would be very late, would it?
Yeah, definitely, yeah. I normally have them breeding around my house till about mid-September, so this is quite late.
Every other year they seem to be away much earlier.
Yeah.
And for them to go now on their own, would that be sort of a dangerous?
It's very difficult. They have multiple broods. They have nest after nest after nest, and they've quite a few chicks in each nest. And the reason for that is that the numbers of both swallows and housemartins, the numbers of casualties are huge. When you think they have to make it all the way across the Sahara Desert, and that's where they get into biggest trouble. And because unlike some other birds that build up big fat reserves, these guys, they just rely on being able to catch insects each day. They sleep at night and head off, and in places like the Sahara, of course, there's just not much for them to eat, so they can get in big bother.
Okay, Heather.
Okay, thank you
very much for your question.
Thanks, Ella.
See, when you find like a seagull's feathers on a golf course, wherever it is that because they sleep and foxes get them at night on there? Somebody said that's what happens.
If there's a patch of them, absolutely, yeah, they'll be roosting somewhere. And that's when they're like, if you think this evening, for instance, with that big tide, all the gulls and all the water birds will be at their most vulnerable, and the foxes and stoats and things like that will be prowling around delighted, looking for them, because these birds will be pushed right high up onto the land. And even little islands or little mud patches or sandbars that normally wouldn't be covered because the tide is so big, they'll get covered up. So yeah, if you see a patch of feathers, something has got them. It could well be a sparrowhawk either. Very recently there I saw a sparrowhawk catch a pigeon, and the pigeon was as big as the sparrowhawk in my garden, and dispatched it no problem at all.
So it swoops down?
It swoops down. The sparrowhawks are amazing things, incredibly agile. They can fly right in between thick little branches and in between thick trees, and they'll chase their birds. 9 out of 10 of their hunting attempts fail. So it's an amazing thing. They're very determined little creatures.
And they kill them in the air?
And they'll try and cut them down onto the ground, and they'll rest them onto the ground.
And eat them and leave the feathers?
Eat them and leave the feathers. And they'll leave quite a lot of the bird as well. They'll normally just eat the breast. If you think of chickens, that's where the most meat is. And they've been pumped up full of hormones and all sorts of things. So in the wild, the only real substantial meat is in the breast. But something else will dispose of the body very quickly then. I know I left the carcass of the pigeon there to see what would happen, and the next day it was gone, and I could see a little trail going from it. I presume it was a fox that came and took it.
The fox got it.
Also, it is kind of finished, but up until a couple of weeks ago, birds were fledging, and all birds in Ireland, all Irish birds, around about August time, they completely change all their feathers. So you'll see a lot of stray feathers wandering around. If you're on the beach these days, you'll see a lot of seagull feathers, very beautiful often, washing up on the beach because they change their whole suit of feathers to be ready for the winter.
Lovely. Is it common to find ladybirds, Angus, at this time of the year? Because I found one yesterday.
Yeah, you'll still find a good few ladybirds, all right. They'll be laying their eggs now at this stage, and they'll be disappearing fairly soon. But the weather's still good. You were reading the forecast there a little while ago, and you're saying 17 degrees. That's ample weather, ample temperature for bugs, and ladybirds hunt other bugs.
So they're having a great time at the moment.
They're having a good time. Yeah, there's still plenty of bugs, and because it was such a cold spring and a wet summer, It was a slow start for insects, but a lot of insects did quite well then as the summer went on with the kind of damp that was in it. So a lot of them are lingering quite well. But wasps, for instance, are pretty much all gone. I see hardly any wasps now. And when we were talking only a few weeks ago, there was lots of reports of wasps, but they're pretty much finished. Okay,
somebody went abroad and never got touched by a mosquito, but got bitten by a couple, they said, in Letterkenny. Is that possible?
Yeah, we have mosquitoes here. We do. Now, they don't carry any diseases. They don't carry malaria or any of that kind of thing. But they will bite you, absolutely, yeah. And some people can react to it, get quite a little lump, but it's not anything that'll do you any permanent damage, just irritating.
But you might need antibiotics for some of them.
Possibly, yeah. If you got a really bad reaction, yeah, it would be worth going to a doctor, but that's pretty unusual. Same with midges. Some people come up with big lumps from the midges. Other people barely get affected by them at all, but they usually don't last.
How do you stop jackdaws and starlings coming into your roof? They've destroyed my roof.
It's a difficult one. Some people spread netting. Some people put up fluttering ribbons and this kind of thing to try and distract them, try and keep them away. And the starlings like to, and jackdaws, actually, both those birds, so they're right, they like to nest in little cavities. And they'll go into the cavities and make a little nest there. In general, they shouldn't do too much damage. They might make a bit of a mess with your droppings, all right, but they shouldn't damage things as such. But in the winter time, you could block up those holes. You wouldn't do it in the breeding season, of course, but you could block up those holes, and you could put up nest boxes for them, and you'd still have the pleasure of the birds around you without them affecting your roof.
Okay, so block up the holes now.
Give it another month or so.
So they're definitely gone.
Because if Housemartins are still lingering and having nests, other birds might be too.
Okay, I have bats in the attic roof space. How would I get rid of them discreetly?
They're protected. They're protected by law, so I can't unfortunately advise a discreet getting rid of. But the good news is that they'll go themselves very soon. Again, that temperature of 7 degrees, once that temperature starts averaging at 7 degrees or less, the insects will be gone. And bats in Ireland eat nothing but insects, only insects. So they'll head off, they'll disappear around about the end of October usually, and they'll hibernate. And roofs are the temperatures fluctuate too much for them to hibernate. It has to be very, very stable temperature. So in caves, in cellars, and places like that. So they'll definitely be gone. Then if you're doing things with your roof or whatever else, well, they'll be gone at that stage, so I suppose you can do what you want. But I would recommend putting up bat boxes for a couple of reasons. They're protected species, they need our help. And the other thing is they do a great service for us, remembering that each bat eats 3,500 midges every night, or bugs every night, so we need them. We need them to keep eating those bugs.
So get a few bats. If you can.
I think having bats around is a wonderful thing. And they're amazing to watch flying as well.
Yeah, but people are scared because Dracula films and they think they suck your blood and they live in your hair. It doesn't happen.
No, it doesn't happen. They're not blind either. They can see about as well as us, probably better than me. I've got glasses. But they won't hurt you in any way.
They use sonar, don't they?
They do. They use, even though they can see quite well, they use echolocation. And when you think of it, it's quite amazing. They shout at a volume that is 4 times the legal limit of nightclubs in Ireland. So it's an incredible volume, but it's at a frequency that's much, much higher than we can hear. Higher even than dogs can hear. Some cats will probably be able to hear them all right. And they shout and they listen for the echo, and they shout again and they listen for the echo. I'm going to be doing 1 or 2 bat walks a little later in the year, around about the end of October, and I'll have those up on my website a little later on. So if you want to find out a bit more, you can come along to some of them.
Dress up as Batman.
You can dress up as Batman and see. We'll talk a bit about bats and why we should care. The over 90% of tropical rainforest plants are there because of bats, because bats spread around seeds, a bit like birds do. So in other parts of the world, they play very different kind of roles, but they're equally important.
Is there a white bat?
No. There is. There's an amazing bat called a ghost bat, and ghost bats hunt other bats. They're in Australia and they live in caves, and they hunt other bats, and they'll hunt rodents, mice, rats, things like that. And they never leave the cave, so they're white.
Back after. Here's Angus. He's with us talking nature today. Angus Kennedy of naturenorthwest.ie. If you want to find his website, go and have a look at it. Loads of interesting stuff on there, and he'll tell you all about his bat walks and different things that are coming up as well. So you'll be able to find out about that as well. Ask Angus. Sorry?
Well, yeah, one thing that's on that at the moment, and it's an appeal that I'd put out to people, is there's a link to, if you want to do any kind of nature surveying. There's loads of different nature surveys going on at the moment. There's bat surveys going on. There was a lot of butterfly and bumblebee surveys. But there's a project called the Mammal Atlas of Ireland that has been going on for 4 years, and it's finishing at the end of this year. And they're asking for records of any wild mammals to put up: foxes, badgers, stoats, mice, rats, any of that kind of thing, hedgehogs. So if you do see any mammals, or you've seen any recently, go on to my website and you'll find a link for it there. And it's very, very easy, very simple form. And the reward you get for it is you then get access to all the different graphs and all the different information. So they'll send you a little bit of info on the kind of mammals and the state of the mammals around you.
Okay. Somebody was telling me, I was in Medjugorje recently, and on the way back to the airport, Angus, this taxi guy was saying to me that there was somebody, he was talking about snakes, because the snakes there. Not in Medjugorje, well, there probably is, but it's very unusual. Yeah. This guy was out near to Dubrovnik, and he was only in his 40s. Not that the age matters, but this guy had a couple of young children, and his wife had been out watering the tomatoes or something, and he went out to pick one of them, and a snake bit him, and he actually died. He said it was unusual, but he said there's actually venomous snakes. No, we don't have that problem here.
It's one of the beauties of being an island. We've no snakes whatsoever. The closest kind of thing, closest kind of reptile, I suppose, we have to a snake is we have a little lizard, all right, who is native to Ireland. And you'll see lizards in the most unusual places. You'll see them in the bog, sunning themselves sometimes. But around about this time of year now, they'll be thinking of hibernating, and very soon they'll go. But no, thankfully, we've no snakes.
You see them in the Canaries?
Yes.
The lizards?
The lizards you do, and the little geckos, which are kind of similar things, yeah.
They come into houses as well.
Yeah, they do, and they eat up bugs. And they'd be catching the spiders that are in your house, and that kind of thing.
Patricia, hello.
Hello.
You want to ask about a bird?
Yeah, I set up last winter a few bat cams, CCTV cams, just to watch bats around the house.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
And it's fascinating, but There's a bird that will fly up and down for hours, very fast, low flying. It's kind of rough pasture and heather, that kind of thing it's flying over. But it's so determined it'll fly around and around and around for hours. And I'm just wondering, would Angus be able to identify that bird?
What time of day is it that you're seeing this bird?
Oh, at night.
Nighttime,
night.
Okay. What they could possibly, because there's not many birds that fly at night, so it's great. You rule out loads. There's the owls, of course.
I've seen an owl. That's different. It's much more slow flying with, big flapping wings. But this is a bird which is bigger than a blackbird, but really flying fast and just flying at about 20 feet high.
I'd say what it could be is woodcock. We have a certain amount of woodcock, which are a type of wader. They've got one of these big, long beaks, and they're amazingly disguised. If you ever do get close to them, they're kind of brown and speckled and flecked, and little bits of white.
I've seen woodcock at night under car headlights and stuff. There's no long beak with this bird at all because it's framed the camera, and I'm just wondering, might it be a snipe?
Possibly, but the snipe will have a long beak as well. Snipe will have a long beak too. The lapwings sometimes will come inside, it'll come inland into rural kind of places if you've got any kind of wetlands nearby, and they'd have a short little beak.
Nearby, I'm near the Guibara River.
And they'd have very kind of rounded wings. Would you be able to take a still shot off the and send it to me? If you could email it to me, you'll find my email address on naturenorthwest.ie, and I'll see if I can identify it. Because at night time, there's not many birds that fly in the evening time.
This one will literally fly for hours up and down. It'll fly along the field and then do a kind of a somersault, fly a little higher, and then a somersault down lower again. So it's doing a loop all the time.
That sounds quite like a lapwing. And lapwings, more so though in springtime, I would have associated with that.
They're winter and summer.
Winter and summer, okay, because they do. They have an amazing kind of courtship breeding display, and the males will do this just as you're describing. They'll fly across and then do little somersaults, and it nearly kind of dive bomb down and fly back again. And that's them displaying and showing off their skills.
Are they sustained on insects? Are they able to live like that on that alone?
They'll eat little bugs that are in the mud, little bugs that are in wet mud. Yeah, and that's all they eat. Yeah, that's their thing.
All right.
So,
okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Mil, but do send us a picture, and I'll hopefully have a better idea then.
Great, thanks.
Thanks, Patricia.
What about the lovely sight of the geese and the swans? When do we get to see them?
Soon. That not quite yet, but they're coming. There's amazing movement. Most of the swallows and housemartins are gone. So many other birds, willow warblers and things. We've over 1 million willow warblers, tiny little birds in the forest. They're all gone now at this stage. They're all heading south. And meanwhile, the bigger birds, the swans, the geese, the ducks and the waders, like more lapwings and curlews and all that, are going to be heading down to us. About 20 million birds used what they call use the East Atlantic Flyway, which is basically an area that captures from Canada right across to Russia, all that northern territories, and they fly down over us, over the East Atlantic or Western Europe, over Ireland and Britain, and a lot of them stop for a bit of food, and some stay for the winter.
Yeah, and birds sleep flying too, don't they?
Yeah, they do. When you think of the swifts that were nesting in our towns, they've all left now, and the juvenile swifts, this year's young, they won't land for at least 2 years, sometimes 3 years before they're old enough to breed. They literally won't land on the ground, so they will sleep. They'll shut down half of their brain and glide along high up in the air.
How does that happen? I mean, you talk about the beauty of nature. These birds do not land. They fly for 2 years, and they're asleep.
It's incredible stuff, yeah, and it also shows you just how much, or if you think about it a little bit, shows you how much bugs are high up in the air, because these guys go high up into the sky, and they're catching all sorts of little things, little flying ants, little caddisflies, a lot of bugs that come out of the water, and these things, a lot of spiders too. At this time of year, there's a lot of baby spiders do what's called ballooning. They let out long strings of web, and then when the wind gets strong enough, it pulls them off, and the swifts eat them up.
More for Nature with Angus Kennedy of naturenorthwest.ie. The deer. You told me there, a great tip for anybody. You can go into Glenveigh National Park. You say it's good time to go. Get up at 6 in the morning. Go there at about 6 in the morning if you've got the time. Walk to the castle and you will hear the deer.
You will hear the deer, and if you're lucky, you'll see them. And with that weather forecast now, try and get in the next week or two when the weather's still nice. And if you get up when it's still dark, and you want to try and get in there before half an hour before sunrise kind of thing. So just when it's when that grey light is there. Yeah, you are indeed. You park up at the visitor centre and you can walk in. And Glenveigh National Park, it's yours, it's mine, it's everybody that's listening. If you live in Ireland, we all own it. A little bit of our taxes goes to pay for it. And the guys working there do a great job keeping it. There's a lovely new path that runs the whole way up to the castle now. But the deer, they come down off the mountains at night time. And they sleep fairly low, and they start heading back up, but they'll be gone by 8 o'clock once the workers arrive. Once the buses start moving.
What's the thinking of that? Why do they come down?
Because more sheltered. It's not as cold when you think it's the higher up you go, the colder it's going to be. So there's lots of sheltered places. They know they're nice and safe. There's very little people, no people really around at night time. But this time of year, it's their breeding season. They call it rutting. It's the rutting season. So the stags have been preparing for this all summer. They've got their big antlers. The velvety felt stuff has been rubbed off the antlers. Their neck muscles have grown. Their manes have grown. And they were hanging out in groups, and now they start bellowing and occasionally fighting with each other. And they try and gather up a little harem. They try and gather up a few hinds. Hinds are the name of the female red deer. Red deer is the ones that we have up in this county, this part of the country. And they let out this roaring, bellowing sound, and it sends shivers down your spine now. It's a really primal, it's an amazing sound. And when you hear that, and the mist is rising off the lake, and on a lovely, settled, still morning, it's an amazing thing. You'll never forget it.
Oh, big roar.
Hearing the big bellows, yeah. And if you're lucky, you'll see them too. You don't approach them because they're very excited. They've only one thing in their mind. So you don't approach them. But anyway, they'll be heading up the hills at that stage. But on the still mornings, the sound will bounce back across the valley, and one will bellow and another will bellow back. And if you're lucky, the few more will join in, all kind of proclaiming their little territories. An amazing sight.
How many did you say? About 300?
There's a herd of around about 300 within Glenveigh. Now that number is controlled, is managed. In other words, they have to cull a few of them, and they do that for a couple of reasons. One is there's no natural predators. There used to be wolves up till only a couple of hundred years ago, really, about 250 years ago, but the wolves are gone now. And the other thing is, if they were just let be, there wouldn't be enough food for them, so the whole herd, all of them, would suffer.
What happened to the wolves? Because there was loads of wolves in Ireland.
There was loads of wolves, and there was loads of deer, and there was loads of trees. And we came along and chopped down the trees, and we like to blame other people and other nations and whatnot for the trees all disappearing. But over 90% of Ireland was wooded about 5,000 years ago. By the time the plantation began, it's debatable now, but it's somewhere between 10 and 20% of Ireland was still wooded at that stage. So most of the trees are gone by us, whoever we are. Over the years, we've been clearing it for farming and whatnot. And you clear that out, and suddenly you've got wolves wandering around, coming onto domestic land and whatnot, or farming land, and that's a threat to people. So around about 1760, the last wolf was unfortunately shot.
Big wolves.
Yeah, big ferocious
would
creatures.
They'd
be a big dog, an Alsatian type size. Yeah. Yeah, and in general, I think there's not much reports of them really clashing with people. They would have kept away with people, and the balance of things was natural enough there. When after the Ice Age, there was big grasslands in Ireland initially. Deer came in, and wolves would have followed them, and then they would have adapted to the forests that grew.
Well, I like deer. They're nice, but we're tortured with them in the spring in our fields when we're trying to keep grass for sheep and lambs as a farmer.
Yeah, and it's definitely a problem because deers, they're really tough, and their numbers are growing and growing. And the more forestry that we have, and the more kind of quilcha type plantations that we grow, the more hiding places that there is for them, and they can do a lot of damage. And part of the reason they do a lot of damage, again, is because of the lack of a natural predator. In Yellowstone National Park, they introduced wolves. About 20 years ago, I think it was. Okay. And it's completely changed the ecology because the deer keep moving, so they stop eating up so much.
Okay. Well, I always love listening to you, and we've run out of time, but we can keep chatting. So next time, we look forward to it. Thank you, Angus.
Great stuff. Thanks very much, Shaun.
Our nature guide from naturenorthwest.ie, Angus Kennedy there.